It's so funny that Warren Buffett's here. He's like just the quintessential lesson in how to actually be a real business person, which is to say, do the same thing forever and ever and ever and be boring and don't change with the times, because the reality is that's what works. That's what will always work. And he's not going to do anything different.
Now it's on for sure. Now it stays on.
Oh, are we recording now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. This is all real.
Well, everything's real.
Yeah, we're becoming a lot more Rogan-esque. We just start talking. Although, I think this is the first time we've done a Fintape episode since we had, what's his name? Chief economist, JP Morgan. I'm blanking.
Oh, Dr. Anthony Chan.
That's right. Yeah, first time since we've had him on.
Very energetic fellow.
Yeah, actually. Do you follow his Substack?
No.
The People's Economist?
I can barely read, dude.
Yeah, I can't either. That's why I subscribe, because I'm nice, but
do you read
I'm
it?
not literate. I'm not literate.
Okay.
No, I make media. I can't read things. I can listen and watch things.
I understand.
But this is probably, this is the first joint. We are putting this on Soup of Wall Street and the Fintape. It's going on both places.
Yeah, 2 for 1.
Wowza. Just put it all out. Backlinks,
it's nice and
everything.
efficient. Mm-hmm.
That way, if one of us makes it more famous before the other, then we just both elevate each other.
That's correct.
Yeah, I dig it. Well, you are starting a new YouTube channel too. I guess we are. There's no subscribers right now.
At your bequest, I am, yes.
Yeah.
Reluctantly.
But why are you doing it?
Because you told me to.
I wish the rest of my life worked that way.
Yeah. I think that I'm doing it because there's this thing going on where I'm like, the more options that you can figure out how to present yourself in life, the more chances you have. I don't know. I feel like putting out a YouTube channel with my actual name on it, where I'm actually going to act like an adult and tell people things that are like allegedly smart.
Allegedly.
I try to be informative, we'll say.
Who's accusing you of being smart?
Not very many people at this point. Not very many people at this point. If you were to read my YouTube comments, they're currently not very smart.
You're smarter than
they're pretty
your
funny,
YouTube
though.
followers? Yeah.
Well, maybe. They don't think so, which is fine. But I think, just throwing a bunch of darts at the board, see what happens. I have plenty of time to screw a bunch of things up. So we'll see.
How are you enjoying Omaha, by the way?
It's interesting. Life moves at a much different pace here than I'm used to. We're almost quite literally, where's the geographic center of America? I actually don't know the answer.
I think it's Kansas.
It's
like
in Kansas?
Topeka or something like that.
Well, Nebraska,
close.
Kansas, it's all the same. Iowa's right there. Iowa's interesting.
Yeah. Council Bluffs specifically.
Yeah.
That's what you've seen.
Kind of a scary place.
Yeah. Compared to the rest of Iowa, which is a lovely state.
Yep. Cornfields. No, Nebraska's nice. Everything definitely moves like very slowly. Omaha's fun because it's like kind of a town, but it's not really. It's like it's got all the features you'd expect in a city, but everybody here just nothing moves on time and nobody really cares, which maybe that's a good way for most people to live.
Yeah. When we started up Pod Pony, or at least when I started up Pod Pony, the feedback was you can't make it in this town. You have to leave. Even Pete, before he started up here, was looking at Atlanta, Nashville, other cities, because there's a reason there are not many media companies in Omaha.
Yes.
Marketing's not typically valued in in a place like this, which is why we have very few people we work with in Omaha, but we haven't left.
Because all the talent is here, right?
That's all. Yeah. Some folks say all the talent exists in Omaha, Nebraska.
You can get anything you want.
Center of the universe.
Yeah. There were a few big companies down there. If I will think it's like, I would almost say it's cute because this is the busiest weekend of the year.
College World Series.
It is the first weekend of the College World Series. Everybody's here. The melting pot of America is in Omaha, Nebraska right now. And if you've ever been in a real city, this is not busy.
No.
This is not busy.
No.
You can still get to the airport in 8 minutes, walk right into the baseball stadium like nothing happened.
Yeah.
We found free parking yesterday, 2 blocks from the stadium.
Yeah. This is why
that's not a real thing.
So I have a couple of friends. So I was at a wedding last night, and their parents moved away. They moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and it's a beautiful place. Allegedly, I haven't been, but
I've heard.
apparently it's great.
That's what they say.
They came back And the sentiment was how much they just missed it here, because
Mhm.
there's so many little things. One, the cost of living, traffic, free parking. The restaurants are just good enough that you're like, why did I ever
Is it really worth the effort? Yeah, like, living in like a real city, like now that Austin's become a real city, it used to not be. Austin was not a real city for a very long time.
Yeah.
I had to remind people like where Austin was for most of my life. And now that it's actually a real thing and we have like real city costs, I'm like my perspective, having lived in Austin my whole life, is that this is just how much everything costs. You know how like, a Coke is always $2, that kind of thing. Well, I started looking at houses or whatever a few years ago, and that's just how much they cost. Like, it didn't cross my mind to go look in another market because I just live in Austin. So this is just how much a house costs.
Yeah.
This is the neighborhood I'm just going to live in.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to look somewhere else because this is just the perspective that I have. Right or wrong, it just was what it was. And then I came here and I was like, oh, so the houses cost 1/3.
Yeah.
1/3 the price, literally.
Yeah.
The first thing I did when I got here, the first night, I got in my bed and I just got on Zillow.
Yeah.
Which
is like a very common thing to
tracking
do when
around.
people come here.
Yeah, but I do that kind of everywhere. I feel like a lot of people do that because you just want to know like what is going through these people's brain.
Yeah.
Like, where am I? What tracks is nice or luxury here? And quite literally, there was an 8,000 square foot house that was selling for less than $2 million. That house in the right neighborhood in Austin, 6, 7, maybe 8, if you get the right spot. And this thing had been sitting on the market. I mean, who's buying that house? I mean, I guess somebody's buying those houses here. There's enough companies, but
yeah,
goodness gracious.
It's a completely different culture. I have another friend of the show, Jamie Hopkins, has said you can't get the best cuts of steak at most of the restaurants here, which will automatically have Nebraskans up in arms. But anyway, because
nobody's going to buy it.
No one's willing to buy it.
There's not a market for it.
You can ship that out to Las Vegas, Beverly Hills, and people will pay premiums out there. And
Exactly.
people are used to it. There's a certain, just people are built with that sort of custom in mind where they know, okay, there's this interaction where I'm going to spend premium, where here, everything is about what kind of deal you could get. Yeah. And luxury, it's again, it's
but
not
that
the
restaurant
same.
We went to yesterday I wouldn't call that like a cheap place. Like the least expensive item on the lunch menu was like a $17 sandwich. That's like kind of a real restaurant. Yeah. I would say.
It's definitely a real restaurant.
I was tracking.
But watch how many of them exist here.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, there's probably, now there's more and more. There are Michelin restaurant or Michelin chefs who are moving to Omaha knowing they'll never get a star, but they have some sort of personal tie to Nebraska. So they come here and just say, screw it. I'm going to try to actually elevate this city regardless of what it does for my career, knowing I'll never get another star.
It's so funny that Warren Buffett's here.
Yeah.
Like,
it kind of checks out though with his personality.
It does check out with his personality, and maybe like he's like just the quintessential lesson in how to actually be a real business person, which is to say, do the same thing forever and ever and ever and be boring and don't change with the times, because the reality is that's what works. That's what will always work, and he's not going to do anything different.
Yeah,
You
also have a lot of business owners who, like Ron Carson, for example, now Omani. There's other people who have built major businesses in Omaha. And people have said, well, there's great people. I do think there is something to be said for the culture of people here, hardworking, and that farm mindset that's just built into us of just tilling the land, work ethic that's just there from generations past. Right. That said, though, labor is also a lot cheaper.
It is.
So you get hardworking people who are going to work for less. Go ahead, try to put that in LA. I'll be honest, I don't hire many people in Los Angeles. Can't. No, it costs a whole heck of a lot more. And culturally, it's very different than a lot of the folks we have here.
It's just not entitlement. It's not entitlement, but also I think that seeing really nice things, seeing nice things all the time. I mean, every single restaurant you go to in Austin, every single place you go to in Austin, every single store is like trying to be like super luxury.
Yeah.
And it's trying to cater to a much different crowd than ever used to exist there. And if people are always being told like this is possible, it's almost dangerous. You can't actually tell everybody that they can become, top 1% or top 5% of whatever, because that's not really possible. You can become whatever your ability allows you to, but people don't have that ability by default. Average exists for a reason. Averages exist for a reason. And it's not bad to be average. But when everybody's always around, like, the center of the media universe is on top of you. That was what was crazy when I was in New York, because I felt like, oh, I live in New York City and the entire world can see everything you're doing. Like, watching the local news in New York was like, am I watching the local news or am I watching the national news? It felt a little different. It felt like there was a lot more eyeballs. It felt like the stakes were a little higher. And when you put that in front of people all day long, they think that that's possible, which in some ways is really good. But kind of throughout history, I feel like the people who were the best were the people who sought out how to be the best, not the people who were told, hey, you can be the best because everybody else can be the best too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when you're in a place like Omaha or the Midwest, yeah, you got Warren Buffett here, but he has a style. It's pretty evident. You don't have those billionaires or, very wealthy people, high luxury around you all the time. And it's just not on people's mind to be like that. And so it creates less of a sense of entitlement. Like, quite literally, I think that when you go to these big cities, when you go to these places where there's a lot of attention on you, people quite literally feel more entitled because they see it all the time. And it creates a much different work culture, a much different sense of I deserve this because I'm here. And I just don't think that it's sustainable. It's, the whole like work from home thing that's completely backfired. That was born out of a sense of really entitlement, right? Like, oh, I can do this, therefore I deserve it. Well, no, you don't. And eventually the market catches up. And if you put yourself in a position where you force the market to catch up, it's always going to swing back harder. It's always going to swing back harder. That's what you see in politics every single time. It's too far this way, therefore it has to be too far that way. That's just how it's always going to be. The labor market's no different. Like, jobs are going to send people back home. It's happening. It's happening in mass. There's way less people who are offering fully remote work at a premium price. You can't have both.
Yeah.
There's a cost to everything. And so, yeah, maybe there is a future or some sort of attraction to, looking to America's heartland for better value, right?
Yeah, it's not uncommon. I mean, in the pandemic, Californians were flocking in groves to Boise, Idaho. Not Nebraska. Maybe that'll change after this episode.
No, Idaho's like a billionaire's playground now.
Yeah, it's
off the grid.
Insane. There are billionaires, and it's a very quiet billionaire town here in Omaha. And so I know of a guy. I went to a jazz club downtown. And this is actually remarkable because when I was at this show, the bassist was the guy I just picked up on, or I just thought to myself, this guy's incredible. And that's the bassist, at least for me, is not the person I'm stepping out and saying, this is the one. Anyone that's talented, this is the guy that's
He's got the look.
Got it. Yeah. And so I was in St. Louis months later, and I saw him at the airport. And so I had to stop him. I talked to him, and I just wanted to say...
So you remembered this guy?
I remembered this guy. That's how good he was.
Okay.
So I stop him in the airport, and I tell him, hey, I saw you at the Pearl at the jazz club in Omaha. I just want to say, dude, whatever it is, you got it. And just keep on keeping on. And he really appreciated that. And so we got into a good conversation, and we were going on the same flight. He said, yeah, I live in LA. But I go to Omaha because I have to get out of that culture and that world to get into my creative space.
Right.
So he has a studio in Omaha, and he showed me the people he tours with and the studio work he does. So he's toured with J-Lo, Michael Jackson, and just the list went on. And he was a concert musician, and there was a few he like did in studio with as well. Apparently it's 2 really different jobs, but it blew my mind. Like, you come to Omaha?
Well, I think what that speaks to is that people who live in big cities actually have a very narrow-minded view of the world, because they're always around people who have all the attention in the world on them. Like, it is not normal for you to live in a city and to be able to go to every single type of store, be able to find every single type of service, maybe multiple, and be able to do quite literally anything at any time. And so when people live in these big cities, I think that they literally have a small view of the world because they think that everybody thinks like them. You're not kind of designed to be exposed to everything all the time. And you're not, people in New York operate at such a quick pace because, quite honestly, like, people say that people in New York are so, they're mean or whatever. They're not really mean. They just have a bunch of shit thrown at them all the time. Like, there's a bunch of stuff being just thrown at them, advertisements everywhere, noise all the time. And you're not really supposed to be around that so much, at least. And it quite literally, I think it gives you like a small view of the world because you think that everybody lives in an environment where all the attention's on you all the time. It gives you this sort of like hero syndrome because there's so much action happening.
Yeah.
And when you come out here, you start to realize like really, like, everybody's nice, but also nobody really cares what anybody else is doing.
No.
And they're not going to bother you for doing anything at all. Yeah. And that's an interesting perspective that guy shared, but it makes a lot of sense when you've lived in a big city for any period of time.
The reason why I never want to move away is I have a good amount of friends here who are also entrepreneurs, and it's really great just to keep me grounded because most of my interactions, like yourself, people just don't live in Omaha, and the folks I work with. And especially when you're working with folks from not just, we're talking New York a lot, but DC, I would argue, feels so much more. The culture's really, everyone's like locked into their careers. And what does it need? What do we need to do to elevate ourselves? And when you have that mindset, it's really easy to take advantage of people and justify things that in the Midwest we'd absolutely count as immoral. And so for me, I've had friends pull me aside and say, I feel like you're caring a little bit too much about your career right now. That's just not something my friends in DC would ever say. They'd say, how are you putting your foot on the gas harder?
It's the small mind. It's the small mind in a big place.
Yeah. Whereas here they see you're pushing real hard, but everyone's like, if you start talking a little bit about your career too much, the first thing that's going to come out of someone's mouth is, but how are your kids doing? That's just the thing. Like, there's this checks and balances. Care about money, but not too much.
It's the pendulum swing.
Yeah.
There's both sides can be useful. But yeah,
it's all balanced out. So
too much of one's never really good for anybody.
Yeah. And then especially, again, since we work with financial advisors, they come to us, they see our studio, they see some of the work we've done. Everyone wants to stand out. As you mentioned, everyone wants to be top 1%. I try to work with everyone who comes through our doors to say, stop trying to be the top 1% and start trying to be whatever the best you is. There's absolutely an audience for that. Now, whether that's 30 people or 30 million people remains to be seen. And we have an onboarding process to find out, okay, how can we actually build a community based on what you enjoy doing? And a good example, we had one advisor say, and they're in Los Angeles, said, I just really want you to make me famous.
It's a bad goal.
Within 3 days, you are never going to be famous. That's not, but if you understand how their advisory fees work, I said, wow, if you get a community of 30 people, over 3 years, all those 30 people close, that's a pretty successful podcast. And that was certainly possible. But the problem is you have to have a certain personality to garner 30 million people. And most advisors don't have that, which I want to argue I think is okay. It's kind of like the Midwest. People don't want,
Oh, certainly.
on average, this big advisor with this huge personality. They want you to be sound, right? They don't want you to be extravagant.
The business model is not really designed for people who are kind of out of bounds. It's not really designed for interesting people. I would contrast it pretty dramatically with something like, let's say a real estate agent who's kind of made for TV in a lot of ways. They're selling on aesthetics. They're selling on, somebody who knows somebody who can get you something somebody else can't. It's not really what an advisor is supposed to be. And what this business, I think, rewards is people who are quite honestly boring, who do the same thing frequently. And what I think that many people who come into this industry in the digital age miss is that, the first thing that they see, the first thing they're exposed to online are advisors and other, we'll say, national financial service firms who are trying to be present online. What you have to understand is that most people, certainly most individual practitioners, once you get down to the individual level, who are successful in silence. The best advisors I've ever been around aren't online at all. And so if you're starting with a strategy that the best people aren't even doing, why would that work? You have to deconstruct this thing from start at the end. Could you tell me who Drake's advisor is? You probably couldn't, but you could literally Google it right now and find out who his lawyer is. You probably could find out who his real estate agent was, but you're not going to be able to find out who his advisor is or who runs, his investments. It's just not the nature of the profession. So trying to chase something that's very public facing, because the reality is, in order to grow a following, you have to say things that are different, that are arguably kind of outlandish. That's what the internet rewards, right? That's not what clients demand, though. Most advisors who do things well in silence, and they don't know anything about digital marketing. And for most people, I'd argue it doesn't really matter. That's not how you're going to grow a successful advisory business.
I think that's changing, though, especially with, you were just at Wealth Management Edge with me last week. I don't know about you, but I feel like the term great wealth transfer is brought up.
Which has been something that's been said for 20 years.
Yep. It's 30,000 times a day. And I get it. I totally understand it. I get it. It's important and we're focusing on it. That's awesome. When you talk about Gen Alpha, Gen Z, even some millennials, the distrust from the profession, it still exists. And there are a number of communication issues that we absolutely see with Gen Alpha entering the workforce, Gen Z entering the workforce, and Gen Alpha. Talking to people, anyone, an advisor, family, friends, about money remains to be one of the top 3 hardest things for people to discuss. And now with the rise of AI and people building relationships with ChatGPT, we talked about this the other day. Someone did a competitive analysis for Podpony and said, here are your 3 biggest competitors. One of them was AUM. I asked it, what firm is that? What agency is that? They said, well, it's assets under management. I said, and anyone that knows anything about financial services is well, you can look it up. That's not a company.
Right.
And I said, where'd you get this information from? He said, well, we asked ChatGPT, which, look, that's something more and more marketers, advisors, people are going to as a source of truth. People are going to do that for investments. There's going to be AI platforms. And so for the advisor that isn't standing out doing anything, I think, it's an industry that's been living on referrals for forever. It's going to keep doing that until the average advisor that we see today doesn't exist anymore. I actually don't know what an independent RIA looks like 25 years from now. I will say, if you're at least putting out content, period, that goes a long way. Look at James Canol's channel. He's not exactly a showman, but he's got, I think, 190,000 subscribers. That's an outlier, right? Not everyone does that. But the biggest RIAs with the biggest channels, there's not a single one of them that I would consider a showman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's merit to being boring because I think when you do have that personality, it looks almost like you're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
These CFPs, their competitors aren't other CFPs. It's the non-advisor on the internet saying, this is what your advisor is not telling you.
Mm-hmm.
And telling you all of these alts you can put your money into.
Right. Yeah, that is an interesting juxtaposition, the people who aren't advisors who put things on the internet, because those are the people who don't know anything. And it's such a weird business to try to grow, quite honestly, because if those people really understood the economics of being an advisor, which they probably don't, I'm not sure what the incentives would be to do something like what they're doing. I'm just not sure what their end game is, quite honestly. Granted, the economics are one thing, but the responsibility of being an advisor is dramatically different than just shilling out bad advice with no recourse. I mean, anybody can get online and say whatever they want. But yeah, that's an interesting juxtaposition. I'll have to think about that. Advisors shouldn't be that interesting online. They should be consistent. I think the way that you build trust is you are consistent, ultimately. It's not even necessarily about doing anything all that interesting or saying anything that groundbreaking. But if you're going to build a presence, it doesn't need to be interesting. It just needs to be consistent, because what people are really scanning for is, can I trust this person, right? At the end of the day, you have to say things that are factually correct in order to have any basis for giving financial, I don't even want to say advice online, because you can't do that. Maybe context online, because people can Google things and people can chat GPT things, but they inherently don't trust those results. Every time I Google something, I just skip the sponsored links.
Yeah.
We're trained to do that now. Mm-hmm. I will not click on a sponsored link. Maybe I should, because I know it'll cost them something. But I just skip those entirely and I go to the first natural result. And then I start going from there. So ChatGPT can be bought. You can just rig the system and say, who's the best financial advisor in this town? There's a way to game that. There's a way to game being the first Google result. We know that too. But more and more, and I think referrals will become more and more valuable. All that being, I guess, present online does is gives you kind of a wider net. The reality is, though, again, if you actually do make it online, if you actually do put out a bunch of content, it actually does work, which we know it does work for some people. That creates such an inflow that you actually have to be ready as a business and a business owner to be able to take in that demand and service it. There is a logical capacity to which an advisor can serve so many clients well. And the more that you scale, the looser your product standards might be, right? So this is the reason that you have these huge wirehouses who have sometimes very strenuous compliance rules, very limited investment options. Some firms won't even let you go outside of a very small tolerance inside their firm default models, because they understand that stuff used to piss me off. Why would somebody do that? They understand that when you're doing compliance for 1,000 or 10,000 advisors, because you've gotten to the point where you're scaling so much that you're spending more money on marketing in a month than you and I might make in 10 years. Because that's the size of real advisory businesses that the average advisor is competing with. Generally, the solo RIA guy is not competing with the other solo RIA guy in town. They're competing against all the wirehouses that advertise way more, and the average client's going, oh, I didn't know this solo guy even existed.
Yeah.
But that's why they have to put such a tight seal on compliance and the way things are applied, because you can't have a consistent product across 1,000 or 10,000 advisors unless you make systems that make it so difficult to go outside of that. Like no client's going to get a wildly different outcome. The worst thing that can happen is your JP Morgan advisor puts you in some products and you lose all your money. They don't want that to happen. They're really guarding against that more than they're guarding, trying to present the opportunity to do something wildly different, because that's too scary for them.
Yeah.
And it should be. That's the right way to do it, by the way. That is absolutely the correct way to do it when you have that scale. But the small guy, going from one advisor to 3 or 5 or 10, that is a monumental task, quite honestly, that many people haven't figured out. I certainly haven't figured out. I don't know if I ever want to figure it out, because the economics are way better as a solo shop than as a 100 advisor shop.
Yeah.
The unit economics at least are, until you kind of break through.
So I go back to, why are you doing a channel, putting your stuff on YouTube? Because
you told me to, Brodrick. That's why.
Hey, wow, that's a lot of trust, a lot of faith from a guy who can't read.
That's,
or for a guy who can't read.
I think it's interesting. That's why I just think it's still kind of interesting. I was an English major.
Yeah.
Like, I never once stepped foot in the business school. I never took a business class. I didn't want to do this.
Yeah.
And then I got into it, and then I got like competent at it. And then I started to get to the point where I thought that I was kind of good. And maybe it's this part of my brain that's like, well, I got to do something different, because I always need to do something different. It's always something that needs to be changing. And I guess the opportunity showed up where it was like, okay, I mean, you can start a podcast. It's pretty easy, relatively speaking. You can even do videos. Those are relatively easy. The reality is I'm sitting in front of clients all day long giving them advice.
Yep.
I say the same thing a lot to a lot of people, because when you're serving an advisory business, you generally have clients who are asking you the same questions.
Yeah.
So I'm giving them the same answers. If you're a good advisor, that's what you should be doing. So it's pretty easy to can that up and put it in a video. And I don't know, maybe it's just something that's pretty easy to put out there and see what happens. I think a lot of really good business people, certainly people who we perceive as being 1 or 2 or 5 steps ahead of us, people kind of looking from the bottom up like to say, well, what is their end game in mind? Like, why is this person making this move? I know I certainly do that when I see people who I just think are ahead of me. I'm like, what are they really trying to do here? There's got to be something bigger at play. And what I'm starting to realize more and more is that those people oftentimes don't necessarily actually have an end game. They're really just trying to do the same thing they've always done, and they're just taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them.
Yeah.
So, for whatever reason, I felt like I was reasonably okay on camera. And so I said, okay, I'll just try and do a video series. And then I said, well, I felt like I was reasonably okay at holding a conversation. So let me just figure out how to try and do a podcast. And I don't necessarily know what the end game of that is per se, but I feel like it's one of those things as an advisor that gives me the opportunity to just have more options.
Yep.
And whatever that looks like, I have no idea what that means today. At the end of the day, I'm not really even sure that doing a podcast or doing videos is about getting clients. It's probably not. That might accidentally happen. It probably will accidentally happen if you do it consistently for a long enough period of time. But it's about casting a wider net of opportunity, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you why we're doing on our
Please.
end your YouTube series.
Tell me what I'm doing.
So as you can see, we're a small team of 6. Well, you can see. The people who are listening to this can't see. It's audio only. And maybe I don't know what clip they're going to pull. Probably not this one. It's a really, really expensive endeavor to put all of our eggs into a video series for someone who's not going to make it. If we can tell out the gate, it's not going to work. Because for us, we started up about 2 years ago. If we put out crappy content around someone that maybe will last 6 months, well, that was a huge, the opportunity it cost that time, we can't get back.
Yeah, you're in a very public-facing position. Yeah. I can mess up.
Yeah.
My business is not going to change. I can flame out.
Every one of our clients, I think, co-brands with us, which has really helped our reputation. But actually for our clients as well, they've said, our Pod Pony partners, they've said, it's kind of nice. It holds you accountable that my stuff can't be crap.
Except for me.
Yeah, except for you. You were the first one, but so we actually just don't have to. Actually, that was me suggesting. I'm like, this is so bad. Please, can we pull this logo?
That's not what happened. That is not what happened.
You're like,
I said, I don't want that logo. Here's more money.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. But yeah, so you've done your show for almost 2 years now.
Really? Has it been that long?
Yeah, almost 2 years now. It's like remarkable that we've been going through this journey.
Just a podcast.
Just the podcast side. And so 1, there's the consistency. 2, on top of that, you do get really good engagement from your viewership on YouTube. Doesn't mean you have millions of views, but with the views you have, you actually get the most amount of comments, I think, for a channel your size. And so that's important because you aren't afraid to put out a hot take. And honestly, I'm very positive, at least 30-40% of the time, you say things that could be considered wrong, but more often than not, you post things as a question and you're like, whatever, it just is. And that's the kind of thing that will ruffle feathers on the internet. So you're definitely you're not a showman in terms of this big charisma, but you absolutely are. And so for that reason, there's something, but you're also hyper intelligent. So you have someone who is willing to share an opinion, or better yet, a thought, that's thought provoking, regardless of the consequences, who is consistent, puts out content. I mean, you flew to Omaha to do this. We right now do 5 total educational video series for the rest of the year at max. We can only do 5 more. Yesterday he said, would you be willing to do this golf series? Absolutely not. Thought about it for a second.
That one?
Yeah, I thought about it for a second. No.
That's not my, just to be clear, that's not my golf series.
Yeah, it's not your golf series. I thought more about it. It's just not in our KPIs. It's not what we're best suited to do. But something like this, 100%. It's just too costly to invest, especially video. Podcasting is one thing.
It's hard to change lanes.
Moving all in with someone on video that can only last 6 months, because it's a job. People don't realize. They come to us thinking,
oh, you live in Omaha. You don't really work.
Yeah, it's going to be so simple, crazy easy. You're just going to film me. I'm like, no, the scripting process is more intense. I mean, you can attest to it. It's not the same beast as a podcast.
Yes. I actually had to write things down and focus.
You had
a
to
little
learn
bit.
to read first.
Well, yes, I had to learn how to read.
Yeah.
And then I tried to film the first one by writing it on the fly.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I guess I better not do that anymore. But the good news is, and I got over this a long time ago. I got over this long before I started recording a podcast. I don't really care what anybody thinks anymore. I just don't.
You're in your 30s.
You can't.
You're becoming a curmudgeon.
Almost, yes. That's what it is. I still have all my hair. But yeah, you can't really think. People's opinion of you just doesn't matter. And that also, I mean that from both sides, I think. Like, I don't care if people say anything poorly about me. And also, I don't really care if anybody like compliments me. And maybe that's a bad thing and probably should be. But neither one of them move the needle particularly much. And maybe I have a very high view of myself, which is probably also a bad thing. But what other people, you just can't. I see very few people who like say, oh, I don't care what people say about me. And then actually don't change their actions because of what other people say. I think if nothing else, you can maybe attest to this, because we've done this, I guess, for 2 years now. From the beginning, I said, I don't really care what happens with this podcast series. I don't care what people say about it. I'm just going to operate. And you didn't really believe me. You thought, oh, he's just one of those because everybody says that they don't care because they don't want to seem like their ego's wrapped up in how many views they get and how much engagement they get and what people say and yada, yada. But I really don't care. And I think that is really, truly the only way that you can actually like do things in a way that is like completely free of an angle, if you will. This is the same thing with doing a video series. Like, I don't really feel like I have an angle. Like, this is just stuff I know. I mean, we spent an hour yesterday talking about Roth IRAs. I'm an English major. Like, I don't know how much I do care. I care about it on behalf of my clients. That's what really matters. And
Yeah.
I know this information just because I like kind of have to, because in order to do this job well, you have to be a professional. You're in professional services. So you better act like a professional. But personally, I'm like, man, if I didn't have a job, if I wasn't doing this all day, and if I really could detach, I would hire an advisor and I would say, I don't care. You do it. That's your job. I don't want to have to know what the latest rules are on Roth IRAs and conversions and mega backdoor, yada, this and that, and like income limits. It's just a more information that doesn't need to sit in my brain. I can live in Omaha and nothing would be in my brain, and that would be really nice.
That's all we have here. Just nothing but corn in our brain.
I haven't seen a can of corn yet, but
you were at 2 grocery stores. That's false. You just weren't looking.
It's first 2 grocery stores of the year.
Yeah, that's wild. We're filming this in June.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, actually. How do you avoid grocery stores for 6 months out of the year?
Well, that would probably be, that's like not true on an absolute sense. I don't think I've gone grocery shopping, to be clear. I think I've accidentally had to go inside of a grocery store.
You have people for that?
I don't know about that. My wife was out of town for like a week last week, and I looked at the credit card, and it was like when I was at home by myself for a week, and it was Taco Bell, Chipotle, Panda Express, Chipotle, Taco Bell. That was, and then I got hungry one night. It's like 10 o'clock, and I looked at my fridge and nothing.
And then you tried one of my famous chicken sandwiches this week.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that's a part of the. Now you did give it the second lowest score.
I gave you some notes.
Yeah, you gave. I don't agree with your notes.
That's fine.
It's not personal.
I don't care.
No, it's fine. So it was an 8.2 out of 10, second lowest. Your feedback was too much breading, different bun.
No, it's not enough bread. The bread was falling apart.
No, but the breading on the chicken.
On
itself.
the chicken, yes.
You're into less breading.
I guess I misheard you. I must be.
Yep.
I must be uncaffeinated this morning.
You're uncaffeinated, but you wanted a big hoagie type bun. That's your stuff.
You really got to cradle that chicken breast. It was a thick boy.
Yeah, that's how we do them. I also use chicken breasts, tenderize those instead of thighs, which I get flack for. But the sauce, it's so creamy. The Korean chili garlic sauce if I actually used chicken thighs, it's just a mess.
Yeah.
Just a gloppy mess, more than it already is. So, no, I love to cook. I think that's just my passion in general, is just, I love waking up in the morning, and there's a few people that I like to just build cool things for. Whether it's cooking for them. I told you, for my birthday party, I had my closest friends over, and all I did was cook.
Yeah, you went out.
Night. Yeah. I love doing that.
You're a real servant.
Yeah. If I didn't marry an accountant, I told her from the beginning, I won't invoice people. That's just not my skill set.
You realize you can't do that, right?
Yeah. Well, we're still in business, thank God. But no, that's like my dream is to take on a few people. And look, as we've gotten bigger, I can't do that anymore. So how do we bring in more people with that same mindset that are creatives? And so I'm basically like still CEO, biz dev, account manager, but really my dream job is creative director. And so when I see people who think they're a blank canvas, think they're like, oh, I don't really want anything out of this. That's great. I know there's something you want out of this. If it wasn't working for forever, you'd say, oh, okay, well, that's just that. But I do think this is going to work. I know for a fact, especially YouTube more than podcasting does turn into leads. It's statistically significant. I mean, the results are there. There's so much data around people going from your YouTube to your website, far more than your podcast to your website. And so, I mean, now the data is really interesting because people who watch an ad on YouTube completely disengage, like how you talked about when you do Google searches, whereas a podcast ad, like 76% more likely to actually go seek out the ad, probably because you're not watching it, you're having to visualize it. So there's pros and cons to both sides. Podcasts, smaller audience typically, more engagement. And especially if you can get a podcast listener, they're more likely to actually work with you. Whereas YouTube, you are broadcasting to the world. And once you get it and it works. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to an advisor who said last year, 135 million in net new assets that came from YouTube. And that's just, and I know people who are in the top 0.5% with their podcast and their advisors, they don't have the same results.
Right. That moves the needle. I don't know anything about this stuff, dude. You're just like telling
I'm just
me things.
talking
I'm like,
to you. I'm talking.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So apparently I can read numbers.
Yeah. So you can do math.
Yeah,
That's good.
I have been told I have to tell people when I'm being sarcastic. So yes, I can read, but I've had people reach out and ask me questions.
You have a lot of people who reach out.
It's the Midwest. People are very concerned about other people here and everyone's well-being.
I try to hide.
Yeah. I like how I said hi to my neighbor and I walk in and you just laugh. Like, we're in the Midwest.
Yes.
Like,
You talk to your neighbors there?
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm making it seem like I'm this terrible, miserable person who doesn't. This is not
from
true.
the Metro Austin.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm an actor now.
Yeah.
I'm just acting.
You're just acting.
I'm on camera.
I will say it is remarkable to me that you've been soup your whole life,
Mm-hmm.
and for this
Since
to
I was
work,
9 years old.
yeah, and for this channel to work, you have to be William Martinez.
I
comma,
sold
CFP.
out. I sold out already. Dude.
How does that make you feel?
I sold out like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I got my first job in New York. So I was an English major. I thought I was going to be a poet. I didn't really understand the economics of being a writer. Do you realize when you write a book, it's a lot of hours. And then when you write that book, nobody ever buys it.
Mm.
So you're working for a very small hourly stipend. If you can even sell books. Most of the time, you have to pay to be able to sell a book.
Yeah.
So you're making negative money. None of this stuff crossed my mind when I was 21 and I graduated college. I just said, I'm going to move to New York. I moved to New York. Then I said, I need a job. So I found this coffee shop in Midtown. And I got an interview. I didn't really realize, like, I thought I was like a big shot. Like, oh, I got an interview in New York. Granted, like, if you go work at any cafe in the world, like every single one of those places is just so eager to hire literally anybody. But I was naive. 21, walk in this coffee shop, get an interview, meet with my boss. He was from Australia. And I introduced myself and said my name was Soup because I don't know. I went to like the liberal arts college. That's what everybody called me there. I never had a job. I literally never had an internship. Maybe I was just unmotivated. I don't know. I was trying out socialism at the time.
Okay. As one does on a Tuesday.
Well, I was an English major.
Yeah.
So, and he just looked at me and went, okay. And then we had about a 12-minute discussion. He was like, can you stand on your feet for 7 hours? I was like, I think so.
No, the last time I tried.
Yeah. Because, I was a college athlete. I used to be able to get around. So he said, great. You'll start on Tuesday and order lunch. It's free. I said, okay. He said, see you then. So that was the entire interview. And then I came back, started the job. And then I got my first paycheck a couple weeks later, which was a physical check, mind you, because I didn't know how to do direct deposit. This was my state of financial acumen at the time.
Wow.
And then I talked to my boss, and he was like, hey, your name's William. I was like, yeah. He's like, I thought it was Soup. I didn't know. I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, I thought it was like an ethnic thing or something.
Kind of wild for New York to say that.
And that was the whole discussion. And I was like, no, that's just what people call me. He said, okay. And we kept going. So I was Soup in New York, and then I had to get a real job.
Ethnic Soup.
I don't know. Just that's what he said. I didn't question it. So that was like how I thought the whole world worked. I mean, I was in Midtown. I was making coffee for people in the Patagonia vests every day. Like that was my clientele, 57th and Lex. And I got really fast at making coffee. Had to make a lot of decisions quickly. Couldn't mess up because there's nothing like instant feedback. Taking an order at the counter in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing like instant feedback if you mess that up. So you learn quick. And I got back to Austin because I ran out of money, like literally. And so I moved back I had to break my lease. It was the whole thing. Moved back to Austin, told my dad I needed a job. He said, okay, but you have to be William. So I said, okay. So I got paid $15 an hour to shred paper in his office because he was an advisor. And I guess by the time I had any sense of personality or self or any sense of know-how, I had been William for too long, so I couldn't undo it. And that was how I sold out. So I've always been William in this industry. And that's probably fine. Yeah. I mean, that's probably how it should be at the end of the day. we do manage real money. I have real clients. I don't know what I'm sounding like to everybody else, but I have a real business with real clients who pay us real money, and they actually call me William. So I was like, all right, fine, we'll make the channel William. I've been like this for 8 years now, so whatever.
Yeah, if you were walking around Edge introducing yourself to other financial professionals as Soup, and the look, there was a couple of people, I just saw the look in their eye. They said, "You said Soup?" Yeah. Okay.
I still sample it every once in a while just to kind of see. Because here's the reality. There's certain people I just know I'm never going to see again for the rest of my life. So my how would I put it? I have room to crash a little bit still.
Yeah.
Just a little, but I pay attention.
So I ask everyone who comes on this show, well, for the folks who are listening to Soup of Wall Street, this is on both Fintape and Soup of Wall Street. As I said in the beginning, but you might not have been paying attention. But now you know. So for you, and especially, we talked about motivation quite a few times on this episode. Everyone who comes on the Fintape, since again, we're a media company, we ask if your life was made up into a cassette and there was a song for every area of your life, but you got to pick the song that defined your career when it was all said and done, what would you go with?
One song to pick for my entire career?
Yeah.
But I haven't even written like half of it.
Yeah, that's the idea. But you got to know what's the goal. It's the motivation. What's the thing that's driving you?
Okay. Remember how I was talking about these people who are successful? They don't know what the heck they want at the end. They're just doing things one day at a time. Like, I don't know what I want. I'm just literally doing things one day at a time. I'm working on the weekend for you right now. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm doing whatever makes sense every day. What was that song in the beginning of Les Mis when they're like, look down.
Yeah.
Just keep rowing.
Yeah.
One thing at a time. I'm a thief. I stole bread. What's that song called?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You look like, you give me this look like I'm saying something freaking crazy. And then somebody, I swear, is going to be listening in their car right now. And they're going to say, oh, yeah.
All right.
And they're probably making fun of me because.
Let's pull it up. Les Miserables. Let's see.
Because I don't know.
We were also listening to Like a Prayer.
Yeah, but that one's too that one's too spooky.
Yeah, it is too spooky. The overture / work song. That's your.
Yeah, can you make that the closing credit?
Yeah, that's yours. We're making that's actually, I think you're the first time on this show we've had anyone pick Broadway. So
that makes sense because advisors are boring.
Yeah, we do get a lot of AC/DC behind the scenes anyway. It's so the reason I love this.
I just said everybody was boring. Sorry.
I think a lot of us are, and Vanilla's great.
I think it's vanilla. Great too. I wish I was boring. I have so many things happening in my brain. My head hurts.
One of the reasons I love this question, and I actually don't prep.
Is this another question?
No, the one I just asked. The reason I love it is because typically, especially at a conference, advisors and just humans, when you go on to an event and you're doing a podcast and people can watch you, and you're at a conference for a reason. You're trying to learn something. You're trying to promote something. You're trying to push something. You're trying to put out the best manufactured version of yourself possible. And when people come on, we give them an idea of what the show is and say it's a real human conversation. It's less about what you're trying. It's going to actually kind of hurt you on this show if you're really trying to sell something. Just be yourself and talk about something you're passionate about, and then give light into our listeners, really who you are as a person, more of that versus what you do. And that question, I feel like 90% of the time just stumps people. And we get really authentic answers in the moment. That's actually what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the song as much as I am when you're uncomfortable. What's the feeling? Like, really, why are you doing what you do? And less, what's your why? And you got to put a song to it. And when it's a lot of people, if I ask them, what's your why? The Simon Sinek. The average person is going to give me, especially on the spot with people watching at a conference, a very good corporate answer. But when you ask a song, well, most people feel a lot more emotion or tie personal tie to their music. And so I feel like it just I'm very confident. It deconstructs all of that. Even yourself, you're just like, you did what everyone else does. Bats your eyes about 7 times in 3 seconds. Oh, shoot. Wow.
You're supposed to tell me everything. What if somebody doesn't like music?
That'll be the first time. If someone doesn't like music, I'm not going to know what to do with that question. But
do you like music?
I love music.
All right, then I love music.
There you go. This will also be the first time I'm going to share my song on this. It's a special podcast because we're in the Pod Pony Corral.
You're stealing my spotlight.
I know. I kind of have been doing that. I'm a really bad manager. I think that's what people should learn out of this.
Wait, are you my manager?
I see. You didn't even know. That's how bad it is.
You didn't tell me.
No, I think I'm picking Dream On by Aerosmith. I don't think I've shared that on this podcast before.
Yeah.
That's just me. I just dream and push through and crap just happens and you just get beat up and you just keep dreaming. And I don't know. When people ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I just want to be able to execute on whatever I'm inspired to do. So I'm totally a creative. A creative director role just fits naturally. But for that reason, I have to surround myself with so many operation people, accountants, and people who are so sound and what most would consider boring. Those are the people that make sure I actually get paid and and the ideas I have can actually move. And so, yeah, that's why financial advisors are the most perfect people in the world for me to work with, because they're just looking for ideas. There's no pushback. They're like, you say YouTube? Okay.
I mean, sure.
I'm like, great.
Whatever.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Dream on.
I guess.
That's it.
I'm just going to go to work.
Do you have anything else to say?
No, I have no more thoughts.
I think that's it.
You've gotten everything you could possibly get out of me.
And that was it. Well, Thanks for joining. For the listener who pulled up a chair, thanks for checking out this episode of Fintape or Super Wall Street.
That's right.
You don't have a closing, I don't think.
No, I just turned the recording off.
All right. Well, they know my closing. You're going to want to hit subscribe. I don't know who we're talking to next week, but I know it's going to be great. So we'll see you then. Boom.
Done.